I think the same thing with agents. If what you're communicating to people holds up over time, and that buyer who, they're seeing the news cycle all the time go in this direction, then this direction. And then 4 or 5 years later, when it's time to, buy another home, they're going to sell, buy something else. They remember that really sound advice that you had given them, that really sound insight that stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of how you build trust. And so I think trust isn't something that's a 24-hour, 48-hour thing. Now, of course, for agents, you kind of need to be able to build short-term trust as well, but a lot of trust comes over time. Well, I think one of the things, a theme that I like that really is at a core of a lot of my reporting right now, and I'm going to take it off a little bit of a tangent here and take it back in time a little bit. But so during the pandemic housing boom, or early on during the pandemic, you had the lockdowns, right? Everything's in a panic. We're trying to figure out what's coming next. And then all of a sudden, housing started to take off. And there was an increase in demand from the ultra low rates, of course, right? Which makes a lot more properties cash flow, brings in some investors. And brings in buyers, first time buyers, right? There's all the stimulus money, PPP, all of that. There's work from home arbitrage where people at higher incomes in New York City, Los Angeles, Seattle could go and buy in areas like Phoenix and Boise and Tampa and Jacksonville and still keep their higher income, right? And then even the people who didn't flee these markets and move somewhere else, there was an increase in just demand for space. People wanted like that extra room for an office. Or if you were, living in one of these bigger cities, you might have been used to seeing your roommate 3 hours a day, and now you're seeing them 15 hours a day during the
Mm.
lockdowns. You're like, you know what? I don't like you as much as I thought.
Yeah.
Million more household formations. And so much of this housing demand was created in such a short window. Even things like also Airbnbs, because a lot of people are not having to work from the office. And so there was an increase in demand there. And so more people are buying the properties for that. All that demand at once. And with housing, housing demand is more elastic than actual supply of housing. It can go up, it can go down much more faster either way.
Yeah.
And the Federal Reserve estimates that to absorb all that demand during the pandemic boom period, new home construction, housing starts would have needed to increase 300% to absorb it all. And if anyone who's close to anything with construction would know there's it would be hard to even go up 50%, let
Yeah.
alone 300%, right?
Yeah.
Only so many people know how to do all the things that go into building a home, right? The skilled labor. Then there's only so many supply chains for lumber, window, concrete, all of that stuff that are ready at any given time to ramp up that much. And then the other thing is there's only so much entitled land that is ready and approved by the municipalities, right? And so you can't go up that much for new construction in such a short window. And so what occurs? A really big overheating of prices, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what occurred in the market. Prices went up, too much too quickly, essentially, because there was so much demand. But and then once we had the interest rate shock, the affordability squeeze of that environment was really felt. Once mortgage rates went up from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. But the thing is, and yes, some markets have come down in prices some, but generally speaking, prices have been fairly sticky here on a national
Yeah.
basis for existing homes. And so we're in this environment where prices haven't given up that much, but there's this real affordability strain on the market. And so as active inventory is built up in the market, it's kind of a release valve that is pulling back the overall levels of appreciation for a while.
Mm.
And then as incomes continue to rise, that affordability picture is slowly improving. It's taking time, but we're essentially in a moment of recalibration where the housing market is trying to work through this. But if you go back through history, there's many times this has happened, right? And not all of them led to, the '07, '11 GFC bust. It's
Right.
happened many times, and usually prices act in, on a national basis kind of sticky, and usually you end up having a period where home price growth decelerates and income growth exceeds it for a period of time, and we kind of get a little bit of a healing for affordability. And
So
so I kind of wanted to throw that out there because that's like
yeah.
my big picture view of this housing market that we're in. And I think kind of starting from that point is kind of a healthy way. And I, and that's not necessarily the tangent that an agent wants to give that whole thing, but that's kind of like a good framing to understand this market.